Drivers, start your engines. Just a day removed from those absolutely gorgeous cars that are the next-gen vehicles for NASCAR being shown off. And to help me talk about that and a whole lot more are my co-hosts, Michael Ward and Christopher Lehman. Welcome, fellas.
Hello, hello.
Drop it.
I think Chris is having dog issues, what that sounded like. I heard drop it a couple times. Chris, we got you? Okay, he sounds like he is fighting with the dog, so we are going to continue on with the program now. Oh, there he is.
Okay. I thought I had it on mute, and then you said something, so then I was like, oh crap, I don't have it on mute, but apparently I muted myself. Drop it.
Pardon our dust. Go ahead.
So, it's a beautiful day here in upstate New York, so I'm actually broadcasting outside with my dogs trying to play fetch, but my German Shepherd does not understand drop it. Apparently.
You gotta love it when they only understand half of the game and not the entire point of the game.
Yeah. The first throw is always fantastic because I start with the ball. And then it's just, if we get 2 or 3 more in, that's a good day for us.
He'll figure it out eventually. But nice to be back with everyone. Pardon our dust a little bit. We did not come on last week with everyone watching the NFL draft. And since we do record these live, we just thought it was better just to check out the NFL draft, since everybody else was going to be watching that anyway, and take a night off. We're back this week. And fellas, I think we picked a good week to come back to because the next-gen cars released yesterday, and they are beautiful.
Yes, fantastic.
Yeah, I tried clicking in on the live thing, and I missed it, and I couldn't rewind and see the unveil, so I had to wait till a little bit later to rewatch. But yeah, they look good. I like the Mustang. That's my first impression.
Michael, what did you think of them?
I thought they were really good. I don't know. They kind of look a little bulbous looking. If it's the word. They're very rounded. I don't know if you can understand where I'm coming from, but it's just something about them that looks really, it's like they kind of protrude out a little bit. But other than that, they're really good looking.
Yeah, they did some changes to the rear of the car. They actually shortened the rear ends by about 10 to 12 inches, which brings them more in line to what a regular passenger car looks like. And I think that really, more than the design changes they made with the greenhouse that they talked about, really finally makes them look stock appearing, because we know they're not stock. And I personally think the Camaro looks the best out of all of them. You guys like the Mustang. The Camry doesn't work so much, mainly because it's a 4-door that's been shrunk into a 2-door. A lot of people thought they'd bring the Supra, which would probably look better on this body style. But as we were talking about on the break, or before the show started actually, Toyota really loves that optics of their Camry taking on and beating Mustangs and Camaros because they can go back and sell that in the showrooms, even if it's with the caveat of, yeah, there's a lot more rules here than you think going on. But we still beat the Mustang and the Camaro.
Yeah, and I want to give my hats off to Toyota. 128 horsepower, just dominated last week. Well, not dominated, but won against 500 horse factory Mustangs and Camaros.
Christopher, I'm sorry, but I can hear the sarcasm in your voice.
There's no sarcasm.
I'm pretty sure Helen Keller could hear that sarcasm.
Smoking 500 horsepower stock cars. Come on now, they're stock cars.
Yep.
Oops, I didn't mean to throw that.
Well, I guess the dog can go get it. But I like the cars. I did a lot of reading about them after the unveiling because there was just 1,000 stories out. And TRD was really upfront with, how they appeared in the articles. I believe it was Dan Wilson that was talking for them. Basically called this the biggest revolution in about 50 years for the sport and said it really fixes a model that has been broken, which we all know about what happened with Front Row Motorsports. And that was really the genesis for all of this. We need to change the sport because they win the championship with Martin Truex Jr. They expand to 2 cars that year. And then at the end of that season, they no longer exist. A championship team was rendered into the past tense in 1 year. That was terrifying for a lot of people. And now they've brought in a lot of spec parts with these cars, which is supposed to bring down the cost long term. Now, next year, the budgets are going to be a little bit inflated because we don't have a lot of parts and pieces. And we know how race car drivers want to crash things. But with all the cost-cutting measures they're bringing in, with only 7 cars per numbered team, got to make that distinction clear. 7 cars per numbered team, not 7 cars per organization. They're going to save a lot of money in the long term on vehicles.
Yeah, more money you can save, meaning more money you can put into development, which means the faster you can make the car.
And also the more attractive they can make it to sponsors because they don't have to spend that much money for their return on investment.
That is also true.
Not to give a grim reaper here, but we know how whenever Alex Bowman wins somewhere, they close down that track. And that's how I feel. That's how I feel it is when you get involved in because, look at the track record. I wouldn't sign a technical with Joe Gibbs if I was coming into the sport.
Mm-hmm. And
that's where teams go to die right there. And I think it's because Gibbs is charging them so much for everything.
Well, that's what was happening with all the teams. People think these technical alliances are giving out the goodness of these teams' hearts, and they're really not. It costs a lot of money to get a Joe Gibbs, the Joe Gibbs Racing vehicles, or Hendrick or Roush and their partnership. And a lot of teams just did not have that money for that price of admission. And then you got to pay the championship tax on top of that. It runs a lot of people out of the sport. Now with these new cars, we see 2311 that came in because that new car is coming. Trackhouse, Live Fast Motorsports, Colleague Racing, which is coming next year with at least 1 car if they can find a charter. It's leveling the playing field to where you don't have to pay an arm and a nose for JGR equipment. You can just go to Dallara, get 7 chassis or the chassis builder. Go to 5-star bodies. You can get your body. Then the other 30 manufacturers that are in there for the vendors list for all these pieces. And you can put the race car together for, in racing terms, a fraction of what it would be to build these cars the way they are now.
Yeah, and hopefully, obviously talking about cost and stuff, I hope what we end up seeing is more manufacturers coming in. I know that was actually a point in the press conference was they were talking about they hope to see more OEMs pop in. And I just can't help but think of this tweet I saw you respond to today, Daryl. I think you probably know the one I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So their top three would be Kia, Dodge, and McLaren. And Daryl's like, why McLaren? And the guy still hasn't written back yet, but that's just an interesting combo of three right there, in my opinion.
McLaren doesn't even have a car that would fit this audience. Why would they come to NASCAR? I mean, they do build the ECUs and all that, but is there a McLaren sedan coming that I didn't know about?
If anything, I've seen some renders of Mercedes, and that's who I want. I want Mercedes.
That would make sense.
That would make sense right there.
Mercedes AMG with Lewis Hamilton on a retirement tour. Let's go.
I mean, there is a YouTube modding NASCAR he played through that put Lewis Hamilton in the game.
Yep. Mercedes would make more sense for a couple of reasons. Mercedes would actually make more sense, though, for a number of reasons. A, they make V8 engines standard in their vehicles. Two, they have, even though they're a luxury brand, they do have four-door sedans that would fit here on the NASCAR circuit. So I think it would help to put them out here. Now, if they're going to make a cheaper Mercedes to sell to that middle-class audience, remains to be seen. I want to see Nissan or Honda come in, especially Nissan with the Altima, because I think the Altima would be perfect for this. But as the Steves were talking about, I believe it was Steve Phelps was talking about this yesterday, they don't expect anybody in until they get that hybridization component, which speaks to another part of this next-gen car, which we do have the next-gen vehicle. Now we got to wait for the next-gen engine, which is supposed to come in 2023. Might be pushed out a little bit longer, but it has been long talked about some sort of hybrid package is going to be on that engine with possibly a downgrade from a V8 to a V6. Going down to a V6 is going to cause a whole lot of drama on Twitter, but the extra power that hybrid system would bring, fellas, I think it'd be worth it.
Definitely think it'd be worth it.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a loss of fans, or at least people on Twitter saying they're not watching anymore. Changing to a V8 anyway, but what people don't realize is with the V6s, they can get just as much power out of those. I mean, sure, it takes a little modification, but they can get just as much power. You'll never even know. On the TV, you will never know that you're not watching V8. They could put four bangers in there, and you still wouldn't know on TV.
I don't think they'll put four bangers in there only because we did that with the Goodies Dash series, and that did not end well. Those cars were far. Look, God bless those guys who drove in the Goodies Dash series, but you had little four-cylinder cars at Daytona. I think every accident there, somebody ended up upside down.
Yeah.
But it talks about just that conversation, what they've done with the car, with the transaxle and the 5-speed shifter and the independent rear suspension. NASCAR's finally coming into the present day with their car. It is now similar to what stock is right now, and that's what they've needed for a long time. Road relevancy. Road relevancy for today, not 20 years ago. That's what they have now with this new car. That's what they wanted. And guys, I cannot wait till 2022. I wish we could use these cars now. We can't. But I cannot wait till next year when we get 40 of these at Daytona.
It'll be interesting.
Definitely, it'll be interesting.
I'm curious about the what Daryl, you had specifically put on Twitter about the sorry, I'm drawing a blank here. The fueling. So they've changed. Yeah.
You go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that it's interesting to see that change coming through.
That caught me off guard at the beginning because I didn't hear anybody talk about that during the actual presentation, but it sounds like they're getting away from the traditional gas cans and going to the GT style little clip-on. Now, that means that the fuel will flow more efficiently. There will be a timing system, basically, on how long it takes for the fuel to get in, so it'll be more accurate to know how much fuel is in the car. And also, you don't have to worry about gas cans getting pulled out onto the racetrack. Now, you might end up with fuel hoses getting ripped out, but it changes a lot of things with the cars. That's going to be a good thing at the end of the day.
I can already see it, Daryl. There's going to be a race, and it's going to come down to something with fuel and the pump broke or whatever. Something happened, or the old, filling the fuel cans as part of the pit stop. It's all skill. It's ridiculous that they're taking it out. I can see it. Twitter will be a mess.
I mean, it's already started with the pit gun, and here's the thing: skill is going to be a lot more important with that pit gun because you're going to find out real fast whether or not you got that one lug tight.
It'll be instant.
Yeah, it's not going to take 30 laps. It's going to take about 30 feet. So, but what's not going to take 30 feet, of course, is getting your finances up to snuff. And if you want to get your finances firing on all cylinders, folks, call Legacy Uncut at 510-928-2104. Andrew and Io will make sure to give your finances the tune-up it needs to go into 2021, breaking all sorts of records. Thank you to Legacy Financial for sponsoring IE Sports Radio. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got to get into a deep conversation about actions, words, and how they're dealt with in the sporting world and how this relates to racing. And also a little bit of conversation about the WEC event in Spa. Excuse me. You're listening to The Extra Mile on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Good deal. Okay. We didn't even talk about what did we even just race? Kansas. Okay. What is your guys' favorite throwback so far for this weekend?
I like green onions.
Hey, sports fans. Do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Wine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all.
Cool.
And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well.
I'm always skeptical
Football,
of people
hockey,
to themselves.
collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter.
Especially
We're going
when
to
you're
talk
talking
about it
about a
all,
guy who's
and we're going to whine about it all.
Throwing it back
So
to
join
his
me
old self,
Monday
but
at 8 p.m. on IU Sports Radio.
maybe
your
that's
direct feed
before he
for
learned
all that is
racism.
sports.
I don't know.
Oh,
Yeah, I thought they were voting on it. No, go to Gib. Go to Gib. It's the sport clip.
Okay. And we are back here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Sorry, there's a little bit of hot micing there, but I think we both had everything shut down. But we're now going to get into the second segment of the show. We're going to talk a little bit about these throwback cars in a bit. But as we get ready to go into the next segment, we've had a lot of conversation on this network, especially at the start, about words, actions, and their meanings. And I did not bring up this topic. Our co-host Christopher Lehman brought up this topic. So I'm going to step back and let him lead us through this conversation. So Christopher, take on over.
All right. So for the hockey fans or non-hockey fans, there was an incident 3 nights ago now when the New York Rangers, which is my team, were playing the Washington Capitals. And there is a historically dirty player on the Capitals. And when a Ranger was on the ground, or he was on the ice, his face down. That player punched him in the back of the head, which is not allowed. When a player is on the ice, you are not allowed to hit. When you're standing up, obviously, fair game. And then when the team came to defend that player and get the other player off him, that same player then threw a helmetless Ranger onto the ice. And luckily his shoulder hit first, which broke the fall. Otherwise, he would have landed face first. And the reason that we're bringing this up is that the NHL Department of Player Safety, all they did was give that player who has a history of this a $5,000 fine, and that's it. So the Rangers put out it's a good tweet. Go to their social medias, read what they wrote, because it's brutal. But they were defending their player, calling for basically a vote of no confidence on the head of the Department of Player Safety, saying that they don't feel that he's competent in his job. And today, this afternoon, it came out that the NHL is fining the Rangers $250,000 for that statement, which for the mathematic majors at home, that's 50 times more for words than actions. And the reason we're bringing this up is because I feel, and I think Daryl and Michael would agree, that we can translate this right over to F1, where you've got someone who used his words and he got into more trouble than a guy who assaulted somebody else. So at this point, Daryl, I will turn it over to you because you are much better with your words than I.
Well, as I look at the situation, I think the Formula One situation is a bit worse because at least with the hockey incident, at least there was some sort of penalty paid by the perpetrator, even though it was not what it should have been. And I'm a fan of the team that was involved in the incident. On the other side of that incident, I think something should have been done, something more serious. Formula One, nothing happened to the second Haas driver. It's basically, we handled it internally. What does that mean? And we never got an explanation. And as we've come into 2021, we just came out of 2020, and everything that happened, George Floyd forward, and I was reminded, actually Christopher reminded me, the driver in question for Haas basically got no punishment for what they did. But Lewis Hamilton wore a free arrest the police officers that killed Breonna Taylor t-shirt on the podium at Mugello during Formula One's end racism stance. And not only was he investigated by the FIA, they came out, with a ruling a week later banning certain, and you can't see my air quotes here, political statements on the podium. First off, human rights is not political. Let's get that straight, but that's a topic for another podcast. Two, if you're going to do that, take all them end racism stickers off the car. Because if you've seen my appearance on Daniel McFadden's Dropping the Hammer, people that look like me and Lewis and Michael, we know when y'all are being performative. And when you are performative, we walk right out the door and we don't come back. What the NHL has been with the Department of Player Safety has been performative, in my opinion. And F1 in the same position. They haven't dealt with a serious situation that puts the sport in a bad light with any sort of tact. But on the other side, a situation that wasn't as serious got dealt with more harshly. And with the Rangers situation, the statement, everything was fine until the last line. That last line did not deserve a $250,000 fine, in my opinion. But it is what it is. It's done now. But these sanctioning bodies, whether it be in the stick and ball world or the motorsports world, they've got to get a grip on what actually requires a punishment and what doesn't. Because right now, the scales look really ugly in comparison.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And obviously, and I don't feel that you two think that I'm equating a PR statement to what Lewis Hamilton was suggesting. But I just saw some certain parallels that what we're seeing is people's words are being taken more seriously than their actions. And, F1 and NHL, it seems like they're doing not even a save face, but like a cover, a CYA, with the Department of Player Safety, the end racism thing. We didn't even talk about that second Haas driver and what he did and how, you touched on it a little bit, but there was no action. We don't know what happened. For all we know, not a thing happened. They could have been shaking his hand saying, hey, we did a great job brushing this under the rug. We don't know what happened. And I think that the team, and one of the reasons that I brought this up was that the other F1 teams had a shot to put out statements saying what's going on. Why is he not being punished? But if my driver did that, we would. If Lewis Hamilton sexually assaulted a woman, you cannot tell me that he wouldn't have faced some sort of public criticism.
He would be canceled far beyond anything that you can imagine right now if he would have.
Yeah, George Russell would be in a Mercedes right now. That's how that would have went.
And let's not even talk about Saudi Arabia.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God.
F1 is just such a joke at this point, just from a sanctioning body standpoint. The competition is great. I love it, but the sanctioning body of F1, I think, similar to what the Rangers are calling for in the NHL player Department of Player Safety, I think teams should be calling for change of management at F1.
And it wouldn't be the first time. It wouldn't be the first time.
To go back to the Haas driver, sometimes it feels like the outside principals have more power over the sanctioning body itself. Because, the guy's father owns the team, and it's just like, well, yeah, he did this, but it's just like the team can't really do anything because, if they do anything, the son's just going to leave the team, and along with the son and leaving the team in his money, they can't really do anything. So it's just like, it's a matter of outside powers and also the fact that the sanctioning body itself just, sometimes they can't really do anything is what I want to say.
And we didn't even talk about that. The fact that with that driver, that's a situation you don't have to deal with in the NHL because all the team owners have money. Formula One, we've talked about it at length about the money issues in that sport, but you've got the problem where the person getting into trouble is also the son of the guy that owns the sponsor of the team. So you try to punish him too harshly, the sponsor takes the money and leaves, and then your team's high and dry. They've got Haas over a barrel. And that's why as the weeks and months have gone on, I don't hold Haas as responsible because what can they do? What can they really do that's not going to end up with the team bankrupt? And that's unfortunate.
I was just going to say, Darryl, really the only thing they can do is sell out, but then it basically becomes second driver's last name racing.
Yeah, and that doesn't fix the situation either. Because now he's got full reign to do anything he wants, and that's just off the track. We've seen what that person has done on the track. Spoiler warning, it's not a lot. And then we need...
And it's retaliatory.
Yeah.
Who did he just spun somebody out in practice, right?
I don't think he spun anybody out, but he did block one of the Alfa Romeos in he blocked Giovinazzi in qualifying.
Yes.
He did that.
Yeah.
He's blocked somebody in every qualifying session, by the way.
Yeah. Like, you cut off top three. Like, just take advantage of what you got.
Yep.
And the thing about it is I want to say every driver that goes into any formula type of racing is good. But the thing that you see on track it's just, what is he out there for?
For fun.
Because his dad pays the money.
Yeah, but it's just like, when you watch him, he's just driving around on track, Daryl.
I've seen it. I've watched the same
driving,
races you have.
He's just driving around on the track. He's not doing anything.
If only
at least Schumacher is out there. At least, he does something. When he overtook a car, everybody was happy.
But he's trying.
He's just out there, just cruising around. And there's even an entire page where somebody programmed if X name here has spun today. That's almost going back to 5 or 6 years ago when there was a page called "Has the McLaren blown up again?"
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember that page. That was a sad time in McLaren history.
So it's just in F1, money just talks. Honestly.
And I don't just want to make this a Formula One / let's dump on Haas situation, although that's really what it's been. But they're the most egregious example. We see a little bit of this to a lesser extent in NASCAR, where we need to see the voices speak up for things. And that's the whole thread that ties this conversation together. We want to see these drivers and these sanctioning bodies and these teams standing up for something. Bubba Wallace and Ryan Blaney were the only two individuals to say anything about the Derek Chauvin case and that conviction. Bubba Wallace has been the only driver that I can think of that has spoken out about the restrictive voting laws in Georgia. Bubba Wallace has been the only Cup Series driver that I can think of that advertised he was getting the vaccine. There's all these positive things that the Cup drivers could be doing. Only Bubba Wallace is doing them.
That's why he's hated.
Because he's doing positive things, and the only one doing them, and no one's stepping out there to help him.
What, and kind of bringing this back full circle, is the one sanctioning body of any sport that you would say, if I would expect what happened in F1 to happen in NASCAR, I would have thought that Bubba would have got fined or penalized or anything for wearing a "I can't breathe" shirt. But what did NASCAR embraced it? You think of Europe, you think of progressiveness, you think of civilizations that have been around for millennia. They've been around for thousands of years. You'd think that they're more progressive, but no. They are further back than the sanctioning body that caters to what you would consider a historically stereotyped racist fan base. I think is probably the nicest way to put that.
That's the diplomatic way to put it, yes.
And just NASCAR has embraced all these changes, and it's like F1 is shooting themselves in the foot.
See, the thing about it though is that F1 is more. I want to say F1 is more concerned about its public image, more so align, actual changes. It's just like they would rather care about, how they look in the public more so than, if it's right or wrong or not, because drivers can't even really complain in F1. If they do, you see what happens. They just get penalized or kicked off the team. It's like in F1, you don't really have that much freedom to really say anything.
I mean, it is totally controlled over there.
I mean, maybe you could bring this back to the I want to say ignorance of the U.S. as a whole. We don't really pay attention to what happens in other countries. So maybe, the F1, they're trying to kind of stay out of our business, so to speak. So I think if you didn't have Lewis Hamilton take a stand, I don't think F1 would have noticed or at least cared. But because
it needs
and
to
if
be.
and if they really wanted to, like, they would have done what NASCAR would have done, and they would have, like, you know, embraced what Lewis Hamilton was trying to do. Because Lewis Hamilton, especially after he retires, he's not just gonna be Lewis Hamilton, the possible 8-time world champion. He's gonna be out here really tackling road issues. And if they would have backed that, it would have looked so much more positive in Formula One standpoint of view, because they would have been also embracing the change with him and working together to create a better change. He's out here tackling, racism, the world issues, global warming. He's out here going to be tackling it. He's not going to have any backing from NASCAR because they're too concerned about his public image to really stand with him.
And that's unfortunate. And because we got to go to break, I'll just wrap it up and say the sanctioning bodies, these sports, they got to get off the fence and start standing for something. The time of corporate entities being neutral, even though they weren't neutral, because you can look up their campaign contributions on the federal elections website and find all that information, but that's a story for another day. The time of them feigning neutrality is over. Pick a side or you're going to get run over by the train. That's basically what's going on here. And that's not a good segue into this second sponsor read, so I won't try, but I will say I want to thank the SoCal Warriors, a semi-pro football team, for sponsoring this show. Their season comes up in the fall. Check out the SoCal Warriors on Twitter for more information on when they get ready to play once again. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get into the race reviews, talk a little bit about a little bit of everything, and get you set for the upcoming race weekend. You are listening to the Extra Mile on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, everybody? This is Taryn Rodriguez. Are you a fan of volleyball? Are you a fan of Thunder Spikes? Then I have the show for you. Set Point, where I cover NCAA men's and women's volleyball, high school boys and girls volleyball, beach volleyball, and even professional volleyball. Catch the action every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And we are back here in the Extra Mile on IE Sports Radio, your feed for all that is sports. Hey, shout out to Daniel McFadden. He had me on his program, Dropping the Hammer, this past week. Go ahead and check that out. It was a twin billing episode. We got into a deep conversation similar to this one about NASCAR and its missteps with tackling racial equity, as well as we talked about Kansas and the Darlington race weekends with a good friend of mine, Phil Espanol, also known as Phil Spain. So shout out to Daniel for having me on the show. We got to have him on this program at some point, and definitely got to have Phil on here as well. So now we're into the part of the program that, of course, has been a mainstay of this show, and that is talking about the races that happened this weekend. And we'll start our last weekend. We can start with the NASCAR race, and that was held at Kansas. The Bushy McBush Race 400. Love that name. Fellas, that race went pretty well for a 550-mile-and-a-half intermediate track race, and then the tire caution happened. What did you guys think about that?
I think this will be talked about for a long time. Which is putting it in the best light possible, I think. There's obviously going to be a lot of controversy around it for a long time, and I'm on the side that thinks that it was a little ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. I think it's another situation where NASCAR is trying to be consistent, even though they have been consistently inconsistent in everything else. And the few times they have been consistent, it has also bit them in the behind with this, because usually when the tire is in a situation where they can get to it and it's not going to be a safety issue, at least from what NASCAR has told us, typically they want the caution cycle to go through. The only time I can remember that happening and they bring out the caution immediately was in the early days of the COT, when the crew guy for, I believe it was Marcus Ambrose, runs out there at Atlanta to go get the tire, if you guys remember that. Like, they had to throw the tire there because that guy was being an idiot, but it's just another situation of the one time they tried to be consistent, it bites them in the behind because it messed up Chris Buescher. Well, Chris Buescher was trying to play for the caution that wasn't going to come until Chris Buescher pitted.
Yeah, there's obviously that bit to it. And, I think another part of it is why did that caution last like 8 laps? It was ridiculous. They flew the flag with like 10 to go or something. Maybe I'm thinking wrong. Maybe
that was a couple of cautions before that. I know the caution you're talking about, though.
Okay. Yeah, why? This goes back to my thought that caution laps shouldn't count, because why you have a caution come out with like 10 laps to go and then they say, oh, we're coming back to a green, white, checkered. Please explain to me what happened to 8 laps.
I've never understood why their cautions take so long.
They need to stop counting caution laps as on track laps. They need to. I understand doing one so that the scoring can be reset. So do 1 lap, and that's all that counts. It's just beyond.
Well, they don't even need to do with the scoring, because at Hagerstown we do. Well, actually, Hagerstown doesn't pit, so never mind. But I feel like there's a way to do the system where you can score it even with the caution laps, or with the caution laps and the laps not counting. But it is a situation that needs to be dealt with. I hate it with the stage cautions that the laps count.
Yeah,
that irritates me.
Yep. No, that's the really big one. Is why. I mean, I get that they're only 4 laps or whatever, or like 3 laps, I think it is. But still, it's like, what the heck? It just doesn't make sense to me. I think it's ridiculous, and I hope that they address it this offseason.
I hope so, but I am not holding out a lot of hope for it, because people have been complaining about it for years and nothing has moved on it. But hopefully something will here in the future. But unfortunately, it leads to another situation where Kyle Larson dominates a race and then doesn't win it, as Kyle Busch ends up picking up the win. And Kyle needed this for reasons that we'll get into in a little bit. But Christopher, it just feels like that one part of Larson's game from Chip Ganassi Racing, you thought it would stay over there. It's followed him over to Hendrick now, where he dominates, and then the last few laps, something just goes wrong and he can't close the deal.
Yeah, I think that he's definitely got the bad luck bug. I thought with him winning so early this season, which, I'll eat crow here, I didn't have him winning this season. He is significantly more competitive than I had anticipated. But yeah, I mean, he's just not being able to close out these races. And part of it's strategy, obviously I forget where we were the last time, but it was all tires. It wasn't, it was not a reflection of his driving. It was purely he was on old tires. And then this race, it's something similar. I think his tires were like 3 or 4 laps older than the other people behind him. Maybe I'm confused. But Yeah, I mean, it's just coming down to strategy and that bad luck bug. He gets taken out on lap 10 at Bristol Dirt, which we all expected, in the dirt world, a podium finish for him at Bristol. So it was, he's just had a disappointing season, results wise, not performance wise.
Yep. As you welcome back, Michael, we will move into the IndyCar race. Kyle Busch did end up winning that race, and we just want to send our heartfelt condolences to the Busch family, as unfortunately Samantha did suffer another miscarriage. Their history with infertility has been well documented by Samantha, as they have actually started a charity around infertility in women as well. And it's just tough to see them have these struggles the last few years. And we send out our prayers and our condolences to the Busch family. Hopefully that win helped ease that pain just a little bit for them. And hopefully that will continue into the rest of the season for Kyle Busch, who has not had a very Kyle Busch season, to be honest. But he did sweep the weekend, also winning the truck race at Kansas. We'll go quickly into the IndyCar race. We're getting to Formula One. There were 2 IndyCar races, and not a lot happened. Mainly due to the fact that you've got basically an ice rink outside the lower groove for these cars. Fellas, and we'll start with Michael since he's back now. The PJ1 traction compound was supposed to help the Cup races at Texas. It really hasn't, if we're being honest. They've killed the IndyCar races here. Eddie Gossage is deciding they're going to continue using it. What should really be done about the future of IndyCar at Texas? Do the 2 entities maybe need to start looking for a separation?
If it's not working, you should probably change it. So I'm going to say they change it.
Yeah, I have to agree.
Is he still there?
We lost him, Chief.
No, I'm still here.
Okay. Can you hear us? I think something may have happened with his headphones. We hear more background noise than actually Christopher. We'll wait for him to get onto that. We'll continue on. That brings us into the F1 race I was about to say Barcelona. That's coming up this week into Portimao. And the Portuguese Grand Prix. Yes, now we got you back. There we go.
Yeah, I just got all this background noise for some reason. I could hear you guys fine, but I don't know. I heard this weird clicking background noise. I was saying though, as I said that this is an instance where instead of not fix, or what is it? Don't fix something that's not broken. We're not fixing something that is broken.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes for Texas Motor Speedway as a whole.
Yeah. Well, we know how Eddie can be, to be honest. Eddie Gossage, he is stubborn in his ways. We'll see if something changes. Hopefully these 2 entities can do something, because IndyCar and Texas Motor Speedway have been together for decades now. I'd hate to see those races end in such a heartbreaking fashion like this. But as we go into the F1 race in Portimao, the Portuguese Grand Prix, Lewis Hamilton picks up the win. Oh, right, before we go on, Pato O'Ward and Scott Dixon won the IndyCar races. So Pato O'Ward, first win for Arrow Schmidt, for the Arrow McLaren Schmidt Peterson partnership. Sorry, I got those backwards. Pato's now going to get that F1 test at some point. So good on Zach Brown for making that. And Pato ends up coming home with his first career victory. Now, on to Portugal. At the beginning of the season, it looked like Mercedes was far behind the Red Bull. But going into Portugal and coming out of Portugal, Michael, it looks like that deficit has been cleaned up.
Yeah, it's just it seemed like Mercedes just definitely had an edge over Red Bull today, just in terms of strategy and in terms of race pace. And
Go ahead.
And I don't really. It's kind of funny because I thought Red Bull would definitely have the edge here because it's a more aero-dependent circuit, but I don't know, Daryl. They just couldn't get it together this race.
No, they couldn't. It really came down to that long front stretch at Portimao. Verstappen came on the radio early in the race and said just like he didn't have enough power going down the front stretch. Now, Spain is supposed to be a better track for the Red Bull, but I don't think it's a guarantee that Verstappen is going to get that win back because the Mercedes has improved. And they are starting to close in. And we know Hamilton, with the second best car, still got the win. With an improving car that could go back to first, he's going to be tough to beat. And if he starts rattling off wins here, you might start putting that 8th championship trophy together for old Sir Lewis Hamilton. But on the other side, Christopher Bottas, another disappointing outing. Qualified on pole, comes home third. What are we going to do about the old flying Finn?
I'm hearing rumors that he might be replaced mid-season, which I highly doubt, but, you never know with F1.
Yep.
Have there been any names connected to that?
Only one, George Russell.
Yeah, well, no surprise there. Yeah, I mean, I think that, if Sir Lewis starts, if he knocks off a couple early wins here in a row and Verstappen doesn't at least, finish second to all of those or, keep it close, that, yeah, I think the writing might be on the wall. Obviously, he's been looking good this season overall. So, yeah, sorry, I'm kind of drawing a blank here. But, yeah, it'd definitely be intriguing to see Lewis Hamilton win an 8th, but I'd love to see it with good competition, a good second and maybe third place, right up there competing for it at least.
Definitely.
We'll see what happens with the F1 World Championships this week. Actually, they're heading into Barcelona. This is a track that is not known for its passing, so a lot is going to come down to those qualifying sessions on Saturday here at the Catalunya circuit. While NASCAR is heading off to Darlington, the track too tough to tame. Got that line right up against the wall. Makes it extremely difficult for these guys to negotiate. And when the car isn't handling, well, you're going to hit the wall a lot faster than you will at other places. And, of course, this is the Throwback Weekend. So before we get into Nearest the Win, Christopher, Michael, give your best in show for the Throwback schemes.
So, yeah, you go ahead first, Michael.
You can go ahead.
So I am liking a specific throwback scheme, and it actually goes back to the year that old Fiji Sims was born, the 1992 Hooters number 7, piloted by Alan Kulwicki. Rest in peace. I love Alan as a racer. I really, if I had to pick the favorite driver that I never got to see race, it would definitely be him. And so it'll be really fun to see Chase Elliott throw it back with a Hooter scheme. The car looks great, and I'm just excited to see it out on the track.
I originally was going to say the Bubba Wallace, Wendell Scott scheme, and I still think that's a beautiful car. But I'm looking at the Michael McDowell throwback, which I believe is throwback to Bill Elliott. That car is gorgeous.
Michael McDowell.
Yeah. Well, it's sponsored by Freight Auctions this year, but it is a beautiful scheme. I'm going to send it to you guys in the group chat. But that is definitely my best in show. But more than best in show, we got to pick who's going to win in nearest the win. And in the point standings, I have actually jumped up to second. I'm going to go find the point standings now.
You got 8.
Yeah, I've got 8. I believe Chris is leading with 10 still.
Yep.
I think I don't have my stuff pulled up.
I had a big weekend this weekend.
Yeah, we had a lot of scoring this weekend, actually, which was surprising because usually we are struggling for points in the early days. But yeah, eventually the cliff will come.
Yeah, I had Dixon and Hamilton. Yeah, that's what I got for.
Yep, so Chris had 10. I have 8. I also had the Hamilton-Dixon pairing, I believe, which got me my points up to 8. Michael has 7. Matt Owens, Taryn, Collins, Pierre, Matt O, Taryn, and Collins are all tied with 6 points. Pierre has 5. Seth 4. Matt White has 3. Couch 2, and Larry has 1. Everyone has now scored in nearest the win this season. Fellas, Barcelona and Darlington, who you got?
You go first, Michael.
I'm sorry, what are the races again? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Barcelona and Darlington.
Barcelona. I'm going to go with Hamilton as a safe pick. Darlington. I'm going to go with Chase Elliott. And then what was the next race?
That was it. We only had 2 races this weekend. So I am going to basically go by default to Verstappen in Barcelona, although I think Hamilton is going to go 2 for 2. For NASCAR, I'm going to go Denny Hamlin at Darlington. I think he's going to get it done at the track. Too tough to tame. Excuse me. Christopher, who do you have?
So just quick here. So I'm looking at the racing reference. I always like to look at the past winners just to refresh me on who does good or historically won at a track. And I am looking at the 5/9/2021, which is this weekend, and they already have listed that a Ford wins. I'm serious. On racingreference.info, they already have that a Ford wins. Maybe it's just carryover because Kevin Harvick won the last one. Maybe they just carry the Ford down. I'm not sure. But I think I'm going to jump on the – I can't go with Kevin Harvick, though, because SHR's dropped off a cliff this year. I'm going to jump on the Denny Hamlin train, actually. I think that he grabs his second win in 3 years or 2 years or whatever. 2 years.
I like how you had this big Ford setup and then jumped to a Toyota.
Well, I was like, I want to go Ford, but then I'm like, wait a second, there's no competitive. The only competitive Fords are Penske.
Well, that's how things go sometimes. But we're actually at the checkered flag of this episode. Remember, guys, Michael's at Michael_Ward. Oh, go ahead.
I said and Verstappen. I didn't pick my
all right.
Verstappen. He won't let me down.
Well, guys, we're at the checkered flag of this episode. Remember, Christopher is at Fiji Sims. Michael is at Michael_Ward25. I'm at DK Jr. 12. Keep it locked to not only the Extra Mile Twitter at Extra Mile IESR. Also, make sure to keep it locked to the iSports Radio pages on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And head over to the website where we've got merch, shirts, and hats for iSports Radio. Go ahead and check those out. If you've missed any episode of any iSports Radio show, make sure you check them out wherever podcasts can be heard. Well, that is it for this edition of The Extra Mile. For Michael and Christopher, I'm Daryl, and we will see you at the next green flag. Good night, everybody.